Welcome back to another Mackem in the Middle podcast after another Sunderland away game. Seems to be a lot of them now. And another Sunderland win, which also seems to be a lot of now. It was a 4-0 win away to Crewe yesterday, which I was at, and it was very enjoyable, I suppose is the best way to say it. Where do you start, John, really, with that? You know, 3 good goals, 1 own goal, which I think Sunderland actually tweeted out that Alex Pritchard scored that one, which I checked when I got home, which was interesting. But another away win, 2 on the bounce now with Gillingham as well. Just a good run.
Yes, it's a very good run. And these two results maybe put to bed a little bit. Can they do it away from home? So obviously we know we got beat by Burton. Then we struggled at Fleetwood, and then the Portsmouth debacle. So maybe that puts that little thing to bed. And when obviously we got Charlton the weekend. When was the last time we had 3 games in a week and we played well in those games and actually picked up the points as well? I've struggled to count on one hand, since we've been down in League One. Have we been able to string that consistency together, during, there's always been a 1-1 draw just sort of stuck in and we're like, oh, we just can't get that momentum. So at the moment, I think it's, I think we're quietly going about it sort of flying, if you know what I mean. Probably a bit naive to try and go toe to toe with us. A little bit, but you can only beat what's in front of you, and I think anyone will take a 4-0 win regardless of who it's against. As I say again, years gone by, we'd have probably gone there and we'd have maybe struggled, and they'd have had one chance and maybe got that goal. Our heads drop a little bit, and you're talking at maybe a 1 or even just about a loss, or maybe just scraping it. But yeah, professional performance, and I don't think we can have any complaints.
Yeah. We're also joined by Mr. Copley, who's on the beers at 4:30 on a Wednesday afternoon. And I suppose John mentioned it there. We got absolutely hammered of Portsmouth, which is interesting because they've been absolutely hammered by Rotherham. I think it was 4-0 as well yesterday for them. But I suppose the one difference from this season in comparison to the last is how well Sunderland bounced back from defeats like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I must provide some context on the Beals comment as well. I was away at Gillingham all last weekend, but I was on a half day today, and I don't start till 12 tomorrow. So if my Sunderland Echo bosses are listening, then I have considered that. I won't be hungover tomorrow. But the game, I think it was hugely pleasing, hugely important for Lee Johnson as well, because he's had this Streaky Johnson mantra, which has followed him from his Bristol City days. We sort of saw that towards the back end of last season, where Sunderland really struggled to get over the line. And then after the Portsmouth game, you wondered if this streaky mantra was going to come back to fruition. It didn't. I think the pleasing things now are that Sunderland didn't have it all their own way against Gillingham by any means, but they came through that game. There was large parts of that game where Sunderland were under the cosh for a little bit, especially following the red card. First half was dreadful, but they showed real resilience to come through that game. And I think, although Sunderland were clearly the better team against Crewe, there were moments in that first half where Crewe looked like they could be dangerous on the break.
Yeah, opening 20 minutes especially, I think Crewe were probably the better team.
Absolutely, but Sunderland weathered that, and I think that's hugely encouraging. And the squad just looks like it's. I mean, even with the injuries and the suspension, the squad's got real quality and depth. Leon Jacku coming off the bench and getting a great goal. Pritchard so disappointed that he's managed to injure himself taking that corner, but Lee Johnson mentioned that it's only a whiplash type injury. I'm not really sure what that means in terms of how long he'll be out, but his delivery from set pieces was excellent. He probably had his best game in a Sunderland shirt, and I mean, that striker up front, Ross Stuart, is just...
He's not bad, is he?
He's absolutely phenomenal for this level. I was chatting to some friends in a pub, and I was saying, obviously, it's League One, but in terms of what he does and how he does it, and his quality in terms of finishing and on the ball, he's like a League One Niall Quinn. He's absolutely sensational the way he moves. But yeah, overall, I think a really important result for the club. And Lee Johnson has had a bit of stick in his time in management and with Sunderland for, talking in platitudes and being a bit David Brent. But one of the things that he's said recently, which has really stuck with me, is the fact that he wants the club to move forward every time they have a game, whether it's the Papa John's or League One or the Carabao Cup. And to be honest, this season, it really feels like Sunderland are doing that.
Yeah.
Even down to the under-23s, that there seems to be a real progression right through the club. And it's early days in the season, but it feels a bit different to the Jack Ross seasons and the Parkinson seasons.
Yeah. And obviously, John, there is still a long time to go between now and the end of the season. But, if you go back to the start of the season, if you were to say like the top 6 teams you'd expect to be up there, you've got Wigan, you've got Sheffield Wednesday. Arguably, you'd have said Doncaster as well. They've obviously started very poorly this season. The teams that you'd expect to be around us at the start of the season aren't really, apart from Wigan. But again, if you look at their squad in comparison to ours, I think we had 7 players missing from yesterday's game, first team players. You obviously got Shamali, Gooch, McGee just came back, Dayaku was playing, albeit with an injury. That is probably one of the most promising signs that the teams you'd expect to be around us aren't putting the same run together that we are.
Yeah, it's very promising at the moment. I think we maybe, sort of have a good blueprint. Obviously we know the squad we had last season was not the greatest for League One. And any team that gets rid, releases the amount of players that we did, I know a lot of other teams did as well. You need everything in place to really hit the ground running. For the following season, we've seen that with, obviously Portsmouth brought in a lot of players. They're struggling. Ipswich, I know they're finding their feet a little bit now. The same. But I think with us, we are a really, really good blueprint for it. I'm sure we all were calling for, when players are being signed for Portsmouth, Ipswich, etc., sort of week in, week out, and we're thinking, oh, we should have signed him. We should be getting it in. We should, we've done it slowly, we've done it progressively, and it turns out after all there was a real well thought out, well executed plan behind the scenes, which I think we were maybe right to have the ump a little bit, because in years gone by we haven't always had those plans and that in place. There hasn't been the proper structure that we really do need to go on and build. And I know we're second. But if those 2 games in hand, you would have maybe thought the form we were on, we would have picked up 4 points. That easily puts us top, and everyone's looking at us then. And it's ours. I still think it's ours to lose. Obviously, like I said, there's a long way to go. But everything's going well. Even the squad yesterday, we still had quite a few missing. The guys you mentioned, we're still missing Emberton through suspension. But with the squad we've got, is everyone is the envy of us. And finally, long may that continue for once.
Yeah. And James, when you look at the squad, you've got the likes of Dennis Cirkin, Colin Doyle, Hoffman, Dan Neil as well. And there's probably more that I just can't think of right now. Huggins. These are all players that are playing the first kind of professional season. This is the first season that they're playing in adult football as opposed to under-23 football. We're second in the league with this many injuries, and I think Johnson said it a few games ago. I'm not sure which game it was, that we are still nowhere near the best. You've got Dennis Cirkin again. He's always the one that I go to. The first game he played, he looked a little bit suspicious at the back. He's improved with every game. Doyle has. Dan Neil is just probably the best player in England right now. It is very promising that these players are young, still improving, yet while they're improving, we're getting the results.
No, absolutely correct to highlight those players. Speaking to Tom Flanagan after the Gillingham game, he was put up as the player who spoke to the media after the win, and he was asked about young players and playing alongside Callum Doyle, and he was right to point out, as you were, that this is a lot of these players' first season in senior football, the first time they're going to places like Gillingham and Crewe, which can be really tricky places to go, quite partisan atmospheres with, good away followings coming down to support them, and a bit of added pressure in that regard. But a really telling line that Tom Flanagan used was that, they're all learning from each other. The Premier League Academy boys are learning from the old pros, he's not even that old. I think he's only about 29, but the lads who've been in the game a long time and who haven't come through Premier League academies like Tom Flanagan. But Tom Flanagan also conceded that he's learning stuff from them. And I think for him to admit that and to go on the record and say that just shows the sort of atmosphere that Lee Johnson's sort of fostering at the moment. He spoke openly about the dressing room reaction to Elliot Embleton's red, which could have cost his team, albeit Sunderland did win the game, so maybe that changed the reaction ultimately. But he mentioned that nobody had said anything to him or had a go at him, which I think is positive, because over the years you've maybe wondered what the reaction would be in the dressing room to a loss and a defeat, and you hear noises coming out. And I think that's probably where the club was at that time in terms of the ownership, that it sometimes wasn't a very good feeling around the entire place, the stadium, like the academy, like the dressing room. But now, as John mentioned earlier, it's completely different. It really does feel like the club's going places at the moment, and it feels like they're doing it the right way as well. I mean, to have Dan Neil in the middle, it's almost like, when you take, to simplify it a bit, it's almost like when you take over a save on Football Manager, like that's the way you should play the game. It sort of feels like that's the way you should do football in a way. That's what fans want, is promote youth and sign young players that you can possibly sell on and build the club that way through the division. So yeah, I really like what I'm seeing at the moment, to be honest.
Yeah, just hope that Dan Neil doesn't get pushed by one of the big clubs like they always seem to do on Football Manager. That's the only
I'd like
comparison I wouldn't like to make.
I'd like to see him sign a new contract as soon as possible, but I think we saw the club enter a sort of more proactive mindset with the Elliot Embleton deal, which hasn't been the case over the years for a long time, and that was done without fuss, without any drama, without any online saga or any leaks to the media or anything like that. So hopefully that happens with Dan Neil as well. But I think in Christian Speakman, they've got somebody who'll be looking at that now. And I think not only will he be looking at Dan Neil, but he'll be looking at probably Harrison Sona as well in the youth team. He'll be constantly assessing the situations of all of these players to protect Sunderland's best interests in the long term, because we now have a long-term joined up way of thinking that John mentioned earlier, which is in complete contrast with what we had before with Stuart Donald and Charlie Methven, who remain minority owners at the club, but don't have a say in the day-to-day running, which I think is, again, hugely positive.
Yeah. Well, the team yesterday, John, obviously Mcgee was back, and I don't think anyone was actually expecting him to be back. Diaku was on the bench, although he still had that, I think it was a thigh injury, Johnson said, which prevented him from shooting on his right foot, or he's been told not to. But it just shows how much better we look as a team with the wide players in. We had Pritchard and Embleton out wide against Gillingham. Well, I say out wide, they were playing more of a central role. That kind of limited Winchester as well against Gillingham. We couldn't really get forward, play that 1-2, as I mentioned in the last podcast we did. But with Mcgee back in the side, there's a lot more width to the team. There's a lot more creativity to the team. And it opens more space for the likes of Dan Neil to play them through balls. Alex Pritchard the same.
Yeah, it makes us look like a totally different team. I think, and obviously, if McGee's in there, I think it gives maybe the rest of the team sort of, maybe sort of a 10%, sort of rise in stature. All of them. I thought he was really sharp, and he was sort of left to his own devices out there, which did really, really stretch Crewe. And I think that's the sort of thing that we can do with this squad. We've got 2 or 3. Tactics, we can play. Obviously, Gillingham was maybe a little bit different because we didn't have that automatic whip almost, and like you say, it would limit Winchester a little bit as well. So it's nice for us to actually have, some sort of tactical plan, for when those players are there and when those players aren't there. But obviously, when they are there, we are a formidable force, especially going forward.
Yeah. And just looking at some of the goals, obviously the first one is, a big slice of luck. The defender, who I think was number 5, who I think was very poor for Crewe yesterday, but he just sliced into his own goal. But the second goal is, I think it was Pritchard or O'Brien, a lot of short passing, the ball to Neil, and then into Stuart in the box with a header, James. It's a goal that we aren't really used to seeing in League One. Last season it was kind of just lump the ball into the box to Charlie Wyke, hope he wins the header. But there was a lot more about the way that we played yesterday, and not just yesterday, but the whole of the season. There seems to be a lot more understanding as to where the players are going to be, and the passing just seems to be a lot more crisp.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lee Johnson talks a lot about protocol and making sure he knows what players are doing, and they know what they're doing as well. They player roles and all of that sort of stuff. I think he's good at that. They've hired staff in and around those areas. But yeah, massively pleasing that Sunderland are starting to score different types of goals. Charlie Wyke last season was fairly reliant on Aydah Mcgee, and compared to Ross Stewart as a fairly one-dimensional striker. And I don't mean that as a criticism. He did extremely well last year, and he'd probably have a decent season with Wigan as well. But I think there's a lot more variety to Sunderland's play. There's a lot better. There's a bit more creativity that we're going to score different ways now, as you mentioned. I think when you've got players at the club like Diaku, Aydah O'Brien, McGee, Pritchard, Embleton, Dan Neil, there's a hell of a lot of creativity there, and there's a bit of pace as well. I remember Jack Ross season, Phil Parkinson seasons as well. We're always crying out for a bit of pace and quality in the middle, to the point where we were actually questioning whether it existed in League One. It clearly it does, because Sunderland have got some now.
Yeah. Third goal, John. A corner sent at the box, Ross Stuart back post, first to react. And we say this every week, but how good is he, Ross Stewart? He scores with his head, scores with his left foot, scores with his right foot, and like James said earlier, there's just nothing that he can't do. He holds the ball up well, he runs the channels well. He's just a great all-round striker for this level, and arguably, if we were to go up, possibly for the Championship as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's about time we actually found, a gem, shall we say, who can maybe rise through the leagues, with our progression, as opposed to having to upgrade every season. I think it's telling as well. Obviously, I'm not going to criticise White last season, but if Charlie White doesn't score, you're not really talking about him. Whereas Ross Stewart, I think he's, we'll call it a drought, shall we? That he hasn't scored for a couple of games. But we're still talking about, his movement, his holding the ball up, his bringing other people into play. We have been crying out for that all-round striker. It doesn't matter if it's in League One or the Premiership. Do you know what I mean? Everyone needs to bring that different dimension to football, as opposed to, like you say, hit it long to Wyke, and if he scores, that's great, but that's not always going to work. We need to build a real system and a real structure, and it will bring everyone in, because if Stuart, and it's sometimes frustrating me sometimes, but if you see Stuart pull right out on the wing, yesterday pulled his man out, how much space was there for the rest of them to actually take advantage of? If Charlie White could have played the channel last season, which he did a couple of times, there was, then when we got the ball and worked it into the middle, there was no one in there. So there is a real plan, and he does really fit the plan. So yeah, what an absolute find, and get him maybe tied down to a fairly decent deals. Well, maybe come the end of the season, and hopefully he can progress as we do, with us.
Yeah. Well, the fourth goal, Diaku came off the bench for the injured Pritchard. It was a counter-attack for Sunderland. Diaku's left foot into the bottom left corner. And, I said it literally a few minutes ago, a different type of goal that Sunderland would score. Prior to this season, I can't ever remember talking about a Sunderland counter-attack, because, as James said before, there just wasn't any pace in the team. There was no kind of directness to the way we played. But it was simple, one pass through with Diaku, great goal, and just rounded off a great evening. But I think the one thing that I took as well from the interview after the game from Diaku is just how much it means for him to be here, James. And, it's probably quite a good comparison considering he played against us yesterday. But McFadzean, I remember one of his interviews last season, I think it might have actually been against Mansfield in the FA Cup, where, he was asked kind of what he thinks about the game, and he went, just a FA Cup defeat, innit? And just kind of got on with it. But you could just see how much it meant to the likes of Diaku, Hoffman, Dan Neil. They'd all look to enjoy being here and want the club to succeed as much as we do as fans.
Yeah, and to be fair, in defence of McFadzean, I wasn't as big a fan as a player. I don't know the bloke at all, but I think some people are more articulate than others, and some people are talkers. Some people sort of freeze up in front of the camera, and I think maybe McFadzean was one of them, and that comes down to character. And I think we've talked about Sunderland identifying strengths and weaknesses off the pitch and basing the recruitment around that accordingly. But I think they're also starting to scout in terms of character as well. The group that are together at the moment look like, it's a real good blend of different personalities, and Leon Diaku looks part of that. As post-match interview I found it hilarious, and in the best possible terms. I thought it was really funny the way he was looking down the directly to the camera when Oscar was asking the questions. I thought that was funny.
Yeah. I can't remember what he said either. He talked about the Charlton game as well, and I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was like, we hope we play a good game against Charlton and we will win. I think it was what he said.
Yeah, something like that. But it's just, you could see he was buzzing, and this is a 21-year-old lad who's, he hasn't played in front of an away end like Sunderland before, so this is going to mean a lot to him. Him and Hoffman, I was reading Hoffman's comments in a German magazine for a column he does, and they both just seem really buzzing to be playing first team football. And what's nice is Sunderland's recruitment team have been able to sell Sunderland to those two players for the right reasons, so that they've come in. They've been sold the crowd, they've been sold the atmosphere, they've been sold the chance to play, sold the big stadiums, sold the good training ground, sold Lee Johnson's management, sold the fact that they're going to play football, the right type of football as well in terms of passing, told that they're going to be developed, and they've come for the right reasons. Whereas in the past we've seen players come to Sunderland for a final payday or because they believe it's a big club. But now that the recruitment seems to have switched a bit, and it's more about who do we want and why do we want them rather than who we can get. And I think Diaku and Hoffman are real shining examples of that. And I don't think we've seen the best of Diaku yet. We're starting to see the best of Hoffman. He's making some brilliant saves. Yeah. He's sweeping up as well. But that finish on his left, first time, the pace as well. It's very impressive. I was thinking about this earlier. It's like the fact that he's been on international duty with Germany sort of like passed me by, and I think it's probably passed a few fans by as well. And it's like the German national team to be playing, under 21 and under 20 football for them. He must have something, and he was at Bayern, so he's got to have something. And he hasn't by any means been our best player this season, but he's one that's potentially going to grow as the season comes on. In the way we've seen, players in previous promotion campaigns come to the fold, like Stephen Elliott and whatnot. But yeah, hugely exciting. And we've got a German youth international playing in League One. It's really impressive stuff, with an option to buy as well. So the club are protected going forward.
Yeah, I'm actually, you might know this, with Hoffman and Diaku. I know. Oh, I think it is Hoffman. I don't know if it is Diaku, but I think with Hoffman specifically, there's an obligation to buy if we get promoted. Not that we're going to have to worry not about getting promoted, because we are, but in the unfortunate circumstance we didn't, do we still have the option to get them?
Do you know what? I'm not sure. It's something I've been asked in the past couple of days, and I need to ask Phil Smith's probably the best guy to ask at the Echo. But there's definitely options to buy. I don't know what they hinge on, but I think you could be right. I think Hoffman's may hinge on promotion, but yeah, it's one of those sort of grey areas, isn't it? I'll have to do a bit of research on that. Look out for the Echo.
I will get a retweet. But it did finish 4-0, John. And obviously the next game comes in 2 or 3 days against Charlton again. Not sure on the team news for that. Don't know how far Gooch is. He seems to be being out for a while. Obviously Diaku will be involved. But even with them injuries coming back, where do you change the team? Aydah O'Brien, I think it was Doncaster he was going to go out on loan to on deadline day. He didn't. He's ended up playing quite a big part. Obviously the hat-trick against Blackpool in the Cup, and then a goal against Gillingham, and generally played quite well yesterday. Say Gooch is back, say Diaku's fit to start the game. Can you drop players like Aydah O'Brien? And it just feels like we haven't said that enough during our time in League One. It's kind of been a case of, well, if McGee's fit, he has to play. If Gooch is fit, he has to play. But that's not the case now, is it?
No, it's not. I think personally for me, I'm not sure I would change it. I know obviously Pritchard maybe would struggle, and they might be just be a bit cautious with him, obviously with his injury record. So if we could sort of give it a like for like and play the same system, because I would have thought Charlton maybe are going to try and sort of play against us and just maybe just hope that they can maybe get a draw. But regards to the team, I'm not sure I would change. I think Diaku at the moment looks really, even though he's carrying a knock by all accounts, I think he looks sharp from the bench. Obviously we don't know about Gooch. Johnson will say this player's out, that player's out, and the next thing you see, literally, obviously McGee, we didn't expect him to be there, and even Diaku even coming on. So you never know with a squad. And the only other thing I'd say with regards to Johnson is he seems to have a plan for literally every game. I'd maybe go as far as to say he didn't adapt very well for the Portsmouth game, but for every other game, we seem to have a plan for the opposition, as opposed to a certain Mr. Parkinson who'd say, no, we'll play our way and we're not going to adapt to anybody. It's nice that we've got a manager who's got a plan for literally every single team in the way we played. But in fairness, playing at home, we should be able to play, our own way. And I'd maybe just see how Pritchard is, and maybe just keep it like Aydah O'Brien for me. I wasn't his biggest fan, but at the moment, our best passenger play yesterday probably comes with him starting with the ball, him, Pritchard, and Dan Neil, create the sexy football goal, I'll call it. So I don't think you can drop him at the moment either. So long may it continue.
Yeah. Well, we'll move into the player ratings and we'll rattle through these as quick as we can, even though it always seems to take ages, but I will make it as quick as we can. And John, I'll start with you. Hoffman went with a 7, had 1 save to make in the whole game, which was another excellent save. In a way, I think it was quite similar to the one that he made against Gillingham, albeit from closer range, but 7 out of 10 for me, John.
Yeah, same. I thought he had a fairly quiet game. I thought he was really, really good on the deck. I put a tweet out that, he plays football like he's got his Bayern Munich All-Stars in front of him.
Manuel Neuer.
Yeah. So
I think that's what Diaku said in his interview as well, didn't it?
Yeah, he's the new Neuer. I think he's better. He's better than Neuer, so we'll go with that. But yeah, I thought 7 out of 10 is not fairly quiet evening that he'll love. Clean sheet as well.
Yeah. James, for you?
Yeah, 7. I think his kicking improved from Gillingham as well, which apparently he was a bit miffed with himself after that game. So yeah, good solid performance. But yeah, he wasn't really challenged a lot, was he?
He wasn't. Winchester, right back. Again, just amazes me how well he slotted in at right back, given the fact he was brought in as a central midfielder from Forest Green. Although I think he did play, could be wrong on this, but I think he played right back at Oldham when he was under Lee Johnson. I could be wrong on that. But, it was just a standard performance from Winchester now, kind of what you expect. Good on the ball, good defensively, good tackles, good passing, and had another shot on goal, which would have been nice to go in, but it didn't. So again, 7 for me, John.
Yeah, same gone for 7. Mr. Steady, isn't he? At the back, going forward, quality. And I was really impressed when the bollocked off Hoffman and Flanagan, when we were under the cosh a bit, and just sent Hoffman get a shot of it. He went mental at him, which is nice to see him taking ownership of that. So yeah, 7 for me.
Yeah, 7 for me as well. Lucky to have him.
Absolutely. Yeah. Tom Flanagan, again, just very comfortable at the back, which, you didn't really see that under Jack Ross, under Phil Parkinson, but since Lee Johnson came in, he's certainly improved. Didn't really have too much to do in the game, but what he did do, he did it well. So again, 7 out of 10, becoming the new 6s for us, John.
Yeah, same, gone for 7. I thought he was really good. I thought he was just like the captain, just without the armband yesterday. Yeah, I was very impressed.
Yeah, James. For me as well. I think he's improved a lot, but he also mentioned post Gillingham that this is probably the best team that he's played in, and that obviously played to his strengths now, which I don't think was always the case. Maybe it's under Jack Ross it was the case, because he did look good under Jack Ross in spells, but under Phil Parkinson I don't think it was his type of football, and he was very unlucky a lot of the time with injury. But praying he stays fit, because he's become a real asset.
Yeah,
I think as well. Just quick one on him. I think because he plays on the right hand side of the centre back partnership with Doyle left, I think we've got a real good balance there. It's almost seemed like Flanagan's always played to accommodate whoever else is playing. So
he looks a lot more comfortable on the ball nowadays as well. I don't know if that's because he's playing alongside Colin Doyle, who is also very comfortable on the ball, but you don't get that kind of heart in your mouth moment when he has the ball at his feet like you used to.
No, there's a nice balance there, isn't there? Left foot and right foot.
Yeah. Well, Colin Doyle was next to him, and again, didn't really have too much to do. And I think he actually might have moved into midfield in the second half when Bailey White came on, and he went on quite a run that didn't actually come to anything. But again, 7 out of 10, John.
Yeah, same. Gone with 7. Nice and short. I think he overrun it once, but he's only young. We'll learn more.
Yeah.
7 for me as well. He's a signing when he signed for Sunderland did not make any sense to me at all. I was like, why have we signed a 17-year-old on loan to play for the under-23s? Little did I know that he's sublime and probably the next England captain or something. So yeah, fair play on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dennis Erkin made up the back 4, and I've went with 6 purely because I think he just didn't. The other back 3 didn't really have too much to do either, but. Again, I think I've just seen a lot more from Serkin. I think he didn't get forward as much as he has done in recent games, and defensively had very little to do. So I went with a 6, John.
Yeah, I've gone with 6. I thought it was a little bit sloppy in possession a couple of times, put us under pressure, which was a bit unnecessary. But nothing to worry about, I don't think.
would have been nice to go with a 7 since he was part of a back 5 that got a clean sheet.
Yeah.
7th round.
Fair enough. Midfield, Luke O'Nien, scapegoat, giving him 8 out of 10. Again, just think he had a poor game against Gillingham in the first half, especially improved in the second. But I think yesterday just shows what he does in this team. He won so many 50-50s, won so many headers. And again, the fact that he's playing on with the injury that he has just shows how much he actually wants to play for the club, how much he wants to be here. So, went with an 8, John.
I've gone for 7. I thought it was a fairly dogged performance, and I think he did the quiet work, not necessarily a lot of it, but just the quiet work that allowed Dan Neil to do his thing. So just gone with running the mill 7.
Yeah,
I've gone with an 8 because I think he was very good in allowing Dan Neil a platform, and I think as John mentioned, he does do a lot of the dirty work, but he definitely improved from the Gillingham game. I thought he was really impressive, to be honest, and good of him to bounce back because I think he needed a performance because he was being questioned, and rightly so, and he continues to play through the pain barrier.
He does. Dan Neil, again, got the assist for the second goal. It was a good run, great play. And again, just he needs a contract. I think he is probably the best midfielder we've had in League One. And the fact that he didn't really play at all last season. Obviously, when Johnson came in, he hadn't really seen much of him in training because, we were playing every 3 days, so you didn't really see too much of him. But I think it would have been a much better team with him last season. But he didn't play. He's playing this season, and he's certainly making his place his own in the team. So again, 8 out of 10 for me, John.
Yeah, I got my 8. I thought it was very good. There was maybe a couple of times when he did lose possession, but everything he did good outweighs that totally. And like I say, I'm sure the club are imminently getting him in that contract, around that contract table, should we say?
Hopefully so.
Yeah, 8 for me as well. I thought his passing was spot on, and he ran the game in a way from midfield, which is hugely impressive for an 18, 19-year-old.
Yep. Aydah Mcgee again got himself an assist for Dayaku's goal. It was a fairly simple assist, but the quick thinking behind the pass is something that I think Mcgee brings as well. He didn't contemplate whether he was going to play it. He played it straight away, and we've ended up scoring from it. Not his busiest night in terms of, he didn't get too much of the ball out wide, didn't have, the same kind of shots on goal that he usually does. But, he's just back from injury. He's not going to be up to full sharpness. So 7 for me, John.
Yeah, same, gone with 7. To be fair, I thought he did look really sharp on the ball. Not everything came off, but we know there's a player there, don't we? So yeah, 7 for me.
Yeah,
7 for me as well, and I think he's going to have a big part to play in Sunderland's season. I think because we're not so over reliant on him anymore, as other players that can contribute during the season. I think I've got a feeling that when Sunderland need a big moment, he's probably going to be the one to produce it, just because the onus isn't just on him anymore.
Exactly
I think that'll stand him in good stead when that big moment does come along for him.
Yeah. Alex Pritchard started through the middle, just behind Ross Stuart, and like James said earlier, probably the best game he's had in a Sunderland shirt. He joined the club and he hadn't really been playing too much. Don't know if he is, fully match fit yet. I'd imagine he probably is. Shame to see him go off with an injury because, like I say, I think a game against Charlton at home, I think he is a player that would probably thrive in a game like that. But got himself 2 assists, was quite busy. The only issue I have with him is he never looks like scoring. I think there was a couple of shots he's had blocked yesterday and in other games as well, but that'll come. So I've him an 8, John.
Yeah, same, gone with an 8. Like we say, best performance so far in the Sunderland shirt, and he needs to carry that on. And then we know we've got a hell of a player in there. I'm sure the goals will come. Everyone's scoring in that team. I don't think there's any slant on him, so that will come. But yeah, I was very impressed. There's a bit gutting that picked up a knock, but hopefully it's nothing too serious.
Yeah, I would go with an 8 as well. I'd echo everything John said, but yeah, you started to see there how a Premier League club once spent £11 million on him. I think hopefully we can keep him fit, and that'll be up to the medical team. And hopefully there's been a bit more investment in the medical team from the club, and there's a bit more of a sensible approach, it seems, when it comes to injuries now. We're not having situations like Jordan Willis where we're really, relying on one player and rushing him back and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, hopefully we can manage him while he can have a big part to play in the season.
Yeah. Aidan O'Brien, think he was probably the only one of the front four that didn't actually get a goal contribution. But, he played a big part in the second goal to Ross Stewart's first. And he just worked hard throughout the game. He's tidy on the ball. Not necessarily the most exciting player on the ball, but I think he definitely is starting to demonstrate why he's in the team and what he offers to the team. So 7 for me, John.
I've actually gone with an 8. I thought he worked his ass off, to be fair. And like I say, played that. Probably started to move. For the sexy football bit. He's had his criticisms in years gone by. So yeah, I'm happy to give it. He's grafted and I think he's brought a lot to the game yesterday. So yeah, I'll give him an 8.
Yep.
I'm somewhere in the middle of the both of you. I think I'll probably go with like a 7.5 if that's okay. I think what John's saying is right. He's not like massively flashy, but he just does so much hard work. He's almost like a Luke 09 on the wing sort of thing. He's not an Aydah Mcgee. He hasn't got like real massive quality, but he's so industrious and he gets in the right positions and he just runs up and down that touchline all day. And to be fair, when he does get a chance, he tends to do all right with them. But I think there's just more of an onus on other players to score. But considering he nearly left on loan for Doncaster Rovers, I think it's a really good thing that Sunderland have retained him because he's a good option and he's very different to Sunderland's other attackers as well. And I think actually last season, I think we talked about Charlie Wagg being reliant on Aydah Mcgee, but I think it was Aidan O'Brien doing a lot of his running as well, which actually helped Charlie Wagg. So I think in that sense he can be very valuable.
Yeah, I suppose the only thing with Aidan O'Brien is, what would you say is his best position, James? Because I think he played central against Blackpool when he got the hat-trick. He's played a lot of the games on the wing in the league, but I think he was signed predominantly to play as a kind of centre forward, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. I don't think he's got that natural finishing ability to be Sunderland's starting centre forward. I prefer him on the right wing, but he's also played like as a support striker, sort of like not a number 10, not a number 9, but somewhere like in between.
9.5.
Yeah, 9.5. Yeah, a shadow striker as it's called on Football Manager. But I like him. I like him on the right wing. I think obviously he's not going to usurp McGeady, is he, on the left? But again, it's very handy to have a player that's that versatile. A bit like comparisons to Luke 09 again, but you've got a player there who's who's going to do a job for you. He might not pull up any trees, and I'm saying that about a player who scored a hat-trick against Championship opposition, but you can play on the left, right, could play in a 10, could play as a support striker, and can play up front. So I think the Aidan O'Brien question is a good one to have around the club actually, and games are coming thick and fast. We're probably going to go quite far in the Papa John's. We may well beat QPR in the Carabao Cup, and then there's games coming up in the FA Cup. Hopefully we'll manage to make it to the third round proper. So that's another 2 games coming. Yeah. So you could players like Aidan O'Brien with the League One fixtures as well. And that's not to say that he's a reserve player that would just need to fill a gap. I think he can contribute in these games as well, which is positive.
Yeah. Well, last but not least, Ross Stewart got himself 2 goals again. Should and probably could have had his hat-trick, but was very unselfish when he was still on goal. Tried to play it into McGeady, but it was intercepted. That's probably the only thing that I would possibly mark him down for, which would be probably very kind of touchy. But I've got the 8 out of 10 for Stuart. John?
I'll probably bump him up to a 9 for scoring twice. Like you say, he probably should have got his hat-trick, but if on another day he gets that ball to McGeady and he's probably up to a 10. And I thought his movement and harassing and pulling their centre-backs out was really good. I'm not quite sure why you'd leave him unmarked in the box if you've done your due diligence on him. But that's their lookout and not ours. But yeah, I was quite impressed. And just touching on what James was saying about O'Brien, it wouldn't surprise me if they've actually worked a little bit with O'Brien with how Stuart is and say, look what Stuart does, look at his movement and look what he brings, as opposed to what we had last season. And maybe you might see it rubbing off on Aidan O'Brien, and maybe he can, not to the same level maybe Stuart can week in, week out, but if we do need it, he can then slot in, like he has done in the cup games. And maybe, with working and training, it might just, serve a purpose for the season.
Yeah. And Stuart for you, James?
9 for me, I think. Excellent, dominant centre forward player. Looks good in the air, doesn't get muscled off the ball. Sunderland fans like a player to run around, and Stuart certainly does that, but he's not stupid with it. He doesn't waste anything he doesn't need to. Every run he makes seems to be fairly intelligent.
Yeah.
9 goals in 12 games in League One this season. I think he got 3 in 13 last season coming in from January, but he had an injury and was behind Charlie Wyke, so a few of them were sub appearances, but looks a real top class striker. Contract doesn't run out, I don't think, till the summer after next.
So, yeah.
You would like to think that he's definitely going to be here next season unless a silly offer came in. Hopefully with Sunderland in the Championship, and hopefully if Sunderland did get the Championship, he would sign a new contract, because I think he could play there. He's only, 25, and I think there's potential. Maybe, I don't know. It's a tough one, because you would want to see him in the Championship, but I think he could do a job in the Premier League one day, perhaps, as well, if he continues to develop at the rate he's going. He continues scoring. I just think there's something there, but hopefully we'll see that at Sunderland.
Yeah. Last two things we'll go through very quickly. Man of the match, John.
Got to be Stuart for me.
Stuart for you, James.
Yeah, Stuart for me. Fantastic performance.
Very nice. Last but not least, Charlton on Saturday. Another home game. Charlton haven't started the season very well, but it's always quite an interesting game between the two clubs. Predictions for that one, John?
I'll take a 3-1.
3-1 for you, and what's it going to be for you, James?
I'm going to go 2-0 clean sheet. Goal either side of each half. Pretty routine performance. They're in complete disarray. I think Nigel Adkins might be possibly sacked by the time that game comes around. Certainly, if he's in charge and he loses against Sunderland, I think he'll be gone. I mean, I had Charlton. I mean, I'm not well versed with Charlton, but I had them sort of been in and around where Sunderland were are now. So it's a bit of a funny one that they're down there and Plymouth are sort of where they should be. But football's a funny thing.
It is. But that is the time. That is not the time we have today, because John, what did you say?
That's what you get for signing George Dobson.
Yeah.
He plays every week for them as well, doesn't he, I think?
Well, that's a problem.
But that is now the time we have this week. Appreciate you both coming on, especially James, last minute.
No worries, anytime. Pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. We will be back on Sunday again to talk about hopefully another Sunderland win, this time against Charlton. But until then, we will see you later.
That's all, folks.